Hello everyone, and welcome back to today's analysis. And now, for the 126th episode, we are going to discuss about none other than Gus Fring, the main antagonist of Breaking Bad. And this episode, just like the previous one, is a special episode, as Gus Fring is by far my favorite villain in all television, given the fact that, much like Walter White, Gus Fring is by far a very realistic and a very disturbing character to begin with, in tandem with the fact that he went on to fulfill all his plans, as well as his conflict and darker mirror to Walter White, are all of them absolutely genius and terrifying. And in this episode, we are going to discuss all that we know about him throughout the series, to understand Gus Fring and his journey from a simple immigrant wanting to start a new life to the remorseless drug lord that he has ultimately become. And now, let's begin. Gustavo Fring was born in Chile on April 26, 1958, and much about his early life out there is absolutely unknown. But all that we know here is the fact that was raised by his parents and he had two older brothers, and all of them lived into poverty and have to sell fruits at the market in order to survive. And eventually, throughout his life, as we know, the real life infamous dictator Augusto Pinochet came to power in Chile through a coup in 1973. And so, it's more than likely that Gaz's life was obviously affected by Pinochet's dictatorship. But wherever he was a simple citizen who was affected by Pinochet, or he might have maybe even worked for him, or maybe was part of the resistance movement, all of these are absolutely unknown. But he managed to eventually escape from Chile in 1986 to Mexico, and there he met the love of his life, a man named Max Ardellini. But both of them were also compromised into Mexico and managed to escape in the United States in 1988, in Albuquerque, New Mexico to be more exactly. And they eventually founded a restaurant chain, Los Pelos Hermanos, that will soon become one of the largest restaurants into the United States. And soon, by 1989, sadly, his whole life has officially changed forever, as he and Max tried to join the cartel, who at the time was led by Hector Salamanca. But that sadly has proved to be a failure, as Salamanca literally killed Max right in front of him and forced Gus to watch, and thus killing the one man that he has ever loved and taking away the love of his life. And thus, Gus Fring from this moment on has finally snapped and became the cold, cruel, and remorseless madman that we've seen throughout the series. And so, for the last 20 years, Gus has dedicated himself to destroy the cartel and end the Salamanca bloodline to avenge Max Adelini's death, and created for himself his own drug empire that come to rival the cartel, and used the restaurant chain Los Pelos Hermanos as a cover-up. And now, for many decades, he will eventually hire and kill people, even minors, in all of these just to achieve his ultimate goal of revenge. And soon, by 2008, things officially changed as he came into contact with a man, a Walter White, a chemistry teacher who was diagnosed with cancer and became a drug dealer to provide for his family, and created the infamous Blue Sky meth. And Gus, wanting the recipe, has officially hired Walter alongside with his lousy partner, Jesse Pinkman. All of this in order for them to work for him and officially to gain the Blue Sky meth in order to advance his goals and to get more and more richer. Meanwhile, his shadow war with the cartel continued, as more and more Salamancas were eventually wiped out, like Tuco Salamanca, who kidnapped Walter and Jesse and eventually got killed by the DA agent Hank Schreider. And then Tuco's twin cousins arrived trying to kill Walter White, but Gus didn't give them the permission, and instead he allowed them to kill Hank to avenge their cousin, which that thankfully also failed, and both twins eventually passed away, and all of this only brought Gus closer and closer to his goal to end the Salamancas. And now, by 2009, things have officially changed in the dynamic between himself, Walter, and Jesse, as Jesse eventually learned to cook on his own and can also wield a gun and help Gus throughout his revenge plan. Meanwhile, Walter became more and more like a burden that Gus had to get rid of but couldn't kill him because he knew Jesse wouldn't work for him anymore. Something similar, a very similar dynamic to how he was at the beginning. As Jesse was annoying at first and Walter defended him, and thus Gus couldn't kill him. And now Jesse defends Walter because he needs Jesse in his plan. And soon, with Jesse and all his accomplices, including Mike, he officially managed to kill most of the Salamancas at their party, as well as many of their associates, and bringing himself closer and closer to finally achieve his infamous revenge plan, as now Hector Salamanca, the patriarch of the family, and the very man who killed Max, is now an old man paralyzed into a wheelchair, unable to speak, and now left him broken, knowing that his whole family is now officially dead. And upon finally succeeding in his revenge plan, Gus officially fired Walter and threatened to kill him and his entire family, which led to Walter teaming up with Jesse in an attempt to take him out. And now, before we continue, we'll now stop and ask ourselves: is Gus evil? And the reason why I'm asking this is because, while it's an undeniable fact that Gus Fring is a horrible monster and has no remorse whatsoever in killing people, even children of all people, he still should be noted here that Gus is pretty much does counts as a tragic villain. Given the fact that he grown up into poverty, he might have been oppressed by Pinochet, maybe even kicked out of his country, and pretty much lost the love of his life right in front of him. That all of this ultimately shaped him into the monster we seen on the series. However, none of this is an excuse for everything he's doing, as while his actions are all of them come from a place of love, as he seeks to avenge Max's death, the death of the only man he ever loved, and who died unjustifiably right in front of him, is actually quite pretty partially justified. Still, the very act that he's willing to murder innocents and pretty much even put innocents in his revenge plan, all of this doesn't justify all these atrocities. In tandem with the fact that he literally will have no problem in killing minors, even babies, like how he threatened to kill Holly White, Walter's daughter, and a literal baby at the time if Walter gets in his way. And as in my opinion, the answer ultimately is yes, Gus is evil, but to be honest, he's mostly a tragic kind of evil. And at the end of the day, he has fallen victim into a trap set up by Hector and Walter, which led to both Gus and Hector dying in the process, by being blown up inside the asylum. And thus, at the end, Gustavo Fring passed away on June 11, 2009, at the age of 51. And on his death, him, Walter, and Hector have won. Walter got rid of him and saved himself, Jesse, and his family. Gus officially took Hector and himself in his grave and avenged Max's death like he wanted, and Hector took Gus with himself in his grave and avenged his old family. So in the end, who was Gus Fring? He was nothing more but a diabolical monster who only wanted to kill all the people who have ever hurted and broken him to begin with. A monster that will be shaped by a whole lifetime of pain, misery, and loss, and will be willing to sacrifice anybody in order to achieve his goals. And a monster that could easily be called as one of the most iconic villains ever made in television. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe, and have a nice day.
All right. Oh, Jesus.